finally, it's the month for my channel to shine. Hi everybody, my name's King Newsme. Today we're hopping right back in with The Haunting Hour. Of course, I have to start the spooky month off with The Haunting Hour. And for those of you guys that don't know, The Haunting Hour is a children's anthology horror show that aired on a now defunct channel called The Hub. It was created by R.L. Stein, who's most famous for his popular book series Goosebumps. The Haunting Hour is known as one of the scariest kids shows of all time, and it's perfect to watch for this month of Halloween. So if you enjoy this video, I have a whole freaking catalog of the best, the scariest, and some weird episodes of The Haunting Hour you can check out. One of the most requested episodes of The Haunting Hour is Pumpkinheads. Pumpkinheads is the 5th episode of the 2nd season, and just like Lily D, it got a sequel episodes a couple of seasons after the original. The episode is called Return of the Pumpkinheads, and it's in season 4 of the series, and I doubt most of you guys have watched it because a lot of you guys did not watch season 4 apparently. Season 4 gets no love. And surprisingly, Pumpkinheads is the only Haunting Hour episode that is actually based during Halloween, which is insane if you think about it. A whole spooky show and only 2 episodes are based around Halloween. The episodes also have one of the best and scariest monster designs of the whole series. And that's saying a lot coming from a series that has this guy in it. It's also based off of a story in the Nightmare Hour book, and it honestly has some really sick art too. And just like the previous episodes that have stories, I'll talk about that at the end of the video. And a couple more things before we jump into the episode. This episode stars Frankie Jonas, who you might know as the Jonas Brothers' lesser known brother. And he's also in the Haunting Hour episode Coat Rack Cowboy. Oh, he plays Dave in the episode. I don't think I mentioned his name. It also stars Casey Roll as Allie in the episode, and she was also in the episodes Wrong Number and Golem. And lastly, it stars Liam James as Scott, and he was in the episode Uncle Howie as Jared. Now that that's out of the way, let's quit yapping and get into the video. We start this episode with a close-up shot of a missing kids poster. That can't be good. We see that he went missing on Halloween night in the year 2010, and this episode is based just 1 year later in 2011. Oh, by the way, I was 10 years old when this episode came out, so if that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what will. Next, we get to meet the family. Dave is so excited about Halloween that he has made 11 pumpkin designs so he can carve a pumpkin later tonight. Jeez, bro, 11? And when their mom gets home, she brings Dave his pumpkin, and it's, I mean, it's like an average sized pumpkin, you know? I've heard like the big pumpkins hurt, so like people like the average sized ones. Apparently not many people are decorating or even giving out candy because last year a bunch of kids disappeared, which kind of ruins the holiday for all the other kids, but luckily their school is having a trick-or-treating event in the lunchroom. So everyone there is safe and no kids will disappear. Hopefully. And their mom is a nurse and she has to go to work because hospitals are crazy on Halloween night for some reason. So she leaves their big sister Allie in charge. And since Allie's a little bit older than her brothers, she invited a friend over to hang out for the night, so they're gonna have to cut the trick-or-treating a little early, which Dave isn't so happy about. They'll be home before it even gets dark, which takes all the fun out of Halloween.
It's not trick-or-treating if it's not dark. Halloween's supposed to be scary.
Bro pulled out the Thriller moves on us. Why do you do that? It's so strange. But Scott points out that they're just going to be trick-or-treating in the cafeteria anyway, so it's not going to be fun either way. But their mom cuts in and tells them that she doesn't want them out after dark anyways because of what happened last year. Which, in case you already forgot, that means kids disappeared. She doesn't want her kids to disappear. Which royally pisses Scott off. Apparently his mom told him that when he was 14 years old, he would be able to go out trick-or-treating alone with his friends. And now he feels like he's being punished for somebody else's kids disappearing. Obviously his mom is just trying to keep him safe, but he's 14 years old, so this is the end of the world for him. How could this happen to me? And right after their mom leaves, Scott tells Dave that they should go get him a real pumpkin. There's an old farmer nearby they call Farmer Palmer. He has a huge pumpkin patch, but sadly it's not open to the public. And Scott tries to convince his siblings that they should sneak into his pumpkin patch and grab them some big pumpkins to carve tonight. Of course, Dave is on board, but Allie?
No way.
She's gonna be a bit harder to convince. Scott tries to convince her by telling her it's Halloween night. You're supposed to do mischievous stuff on Halloween. That's what makes it so fun. But she's not buying it. He even offers to do her chores for 2 months.
You're not gonna do it.
But no dice. Finally, he agrees to leave her and her friend alone tonight while they hang out. And ding ding ding, we have a winner. So Allie drives them herself to this pumpkin patch. They make it to the farm and it's absolutely loaded in pumpkins. And Allie points out that it's kind of strange that he has so many pumpkins all to himself. Luckily, I think Dave solved that mystery.
Maybe he really likes pumpkin pie.
That's it. He cracked the case. Come on, everybody. Give him a round of applause. Yes, yes. The kids try to be as sneaky as possible while they're on the farm, but little do they know, somebody's already watching them. And while they explore, Scott starts peeking into this makeshift barn when he spots something a little strange inside. Of course, him being a teenage boy, he thinks it's really cool, and he quickly finds his way inside the barn, which Allie, of course, doesn't approve of, but Dave convinces her because he has a way with words.
What? Are you chicken?
God, I love Dave. Inside, the kids find these strange scarecrows with pumpkins for heads set up in weird scenes. The first one's very tame, but as the kids wander the halls, they just get weirder and more terrifying. One is shown pulling a knife out of his own head, and the last one shows one strapped down on a table while two tower over them, and one has a knife ready to stab him. The kids are visibly freaked out. Allie and Dave even just run out of the building altogether. But there's one more hallway that piques Scott's curiosity. But sadly, his siblings don't let him walk down that one. And that's probably for the best. Allie and Dave quickly start picking out pumpkins as Scott goes to a different patch that strangely has pumpkins with burlap sacks over them. Scott reaches down to see what's underneath it, but that's when Farmer Palmer comes outside. They try to quickly escape, but Scott falls into a huge hole. Where did that hole even come from? And before they can pull him out,
You got no business being out here!
Farmer Palmer catches them. The kids apologize for sneaking onto his property, but rather than accepting their apology, Farmer Palmer leans down, grabs Scott's head, and says,
Not quite ripe yet.
before helping Scott out of the hole and telling them to never come back. After that, the kids run away, and Farmer Palmer leans down to the covered pumpkins and tells them that they're safe now, that he won't let anyone hurt them. Just a bit strange, just some strange behavior coming from this man. The kids start sprinting to the car, but of course Dave and Scott don't have their pumpkins yet, so Scott just grabs two big ones as they make their escape. And I doubt he would have done that if he knew somebody was following very close behind them and watches them as they leave. Back at the house, Dave gets to work carving some pumpkins before they go trick-or-treating. And as he does this, Scott tries to convince them that they should go back to Farmer Palmer's house and basically just vandalize the place. Just for fun. But of course, Allie won't let that happen, which makes Scott mad, so he starts complaining about how Halloween isn't fun anymore and blah, 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 blah. But as he does all this, somebody followed them to their house. And as they try to make their way into the house, Dave opens his pumpkin to find not pumpkin seeds, but worms. Allie thinks Scott did this as some kind of sick prank, but Scott says it wasn't him, but he kind of wishes he thought of it.
Is this another one of your stupid pranks?
No, but I wish I had thought of it.
Scott thinks the worms are super cool, and he excitedly opens his pumpkin to find nothing. I guess Dave just grabbed a really bad pumpkin. That's when Dave takes a closer look at the top of Scott's pumpkin and sees that there's a tooth lodged inside of it. Allie is done with the weird ass pumpkins, so she makes both of the boys throw them away. And they have to get ready for the school event anyway, so Scott puts them in a trash bag and takes them outside, where he could have gotten a glance at whoever's been following him, but he's so tunnel visioned that he doesn't even see somebody standing 3 feet away from him. This dude is so unaware of his surroundings. It's probably how he fell in the hole. Finally, it's time to go trick-or-treating, and we get to see their awesome costumes. Scott is a bloody doctor, I think, and Dave is some kind of zombie.
I'm zombie Justin Bieber.
Oh, okay, buddy. Wow, that really dated this episode. And Allie is a pirate, which is the only normal costume. Now that they're all ready, they decide to go head towards the school as the person gets closer and closer to them. They start to follow the kids to the school, but there are too many people around, so they back off. That night, when the kids get back from the school, it looks like the person that's been following them made their way inside the house. But the kids don't notice them, and they all collectively agree to throw on some popcorn and put on a horror movie and just end off the night right. But Scott still wants to go to Palmer's farm and get revenge for what he did to him, and he tries to peer pressure Allie into going. But Allie is a good sister, and she doesn't take the bait. And since she won't take him, Scott tells her that he's just gonna walk there without her. And then she finally puts her foot down.
You stay here, Scott, okay? I mean it.
Thank God, he was really starting to get on my nerves. Scott stands in the kitchen pouting because he can't go break the law. Also, he's waiting for the popcorn when he notices some pumpkin guts on the floor. Strangely, the lights go out in the house, and then he turns around to see something horrifying. The terrifying pumpkin statues from earlier put a sack over his head and kidnap him. But Dave and Allie don't hear a thing because the TV's turned up way too damn loud. He also burned the popcorn. God, this is such a mess. When they go to check on the popcorn, Dave points out that the door is wide open, which leaves Allie to believe that Scott snuck out to Palmer's farm after she told him not to, which royally pisses her off, so her and Dave get in the car and head over to the farm. They pull up to the farm, and Allie tells Dave to wait in the car while she just goes and grabs Scott and comes right back. She stands at the fence and calls out to Scott, but She doesn't get an answer. And she doesn't see him either. All she can see is the gloomy pumpkin patch with a thick layer of fog covering the pumpkins. And when Scott doesn't answer, she decides to be brave and just head inside of there and grab him. But little does she know, someone's already got a close eye on her. As she looks around, she spots somebody peeking over some hay bales near the makeshift barn. She obviously thinks it's Scott trying to hide from her, so she walks over towards it. Inside the barn, Allie finds that the pumpkin people are now gone. And the place is 10 times creepier at night. And as she searches the pitch black twisting hallways, she finally finds Scott. Or is it Scott? One of the pumpkin people are now wearing Scott's costume. Of course, Allie thinks it's just her brother trying to play a mean prank on her, so she decides to pull out the big guns. She's going to tell Mom. She says that if he doesn't come out, she's going to tell their mom everything. But if he does come out, she'll just act like this never happened. And that's when a light in the room starts to swing on its own. Suddenly, the Pumpkinhead dressed as Scott starts chasing after Allie. Luckily, she escapes out of the barn before anything bad could happen. Wait, I wonder how Dave is doing. Is he okay?
I love Halloween.
I shouldn't have asked. Allie tries her best to escape back to the car, but no matter where she turns, Pumpkinheads are in her way. Luckily, she does find one path that is Pumpkinhead free, but she accidentally trips over one of the vines near the pumpkins with the burlap sacks over them. And her curiosity takes over, so she decides to see what's underneath the sacks. And she lifts it up to find... Holy shit! Absolutely terrified, she backs into Farmer Palmer. He tells her that kids these days just don't listen. He admits to kidnapping the kids years prior, and now they're all his Pumpkinheads. And he tells her that he did warn them to not come back, but they didn't listen. Then he reaches his hand down, grabs Scott's head, and says,
Still not right, but getting there.
as the Pumpkinheads surround Allie. And back at the car, we see that another Pumpkinhead is also giving Dave a little visit. And that's how the episode ends. Wow, what an episode. I knew it had to be everyone's favorite episode of The Haunting Hour for a good reason. This was a great episode, and it easily became one of my top 5s. I love how tense and eerie most of the episode is. Like, from the moment they step foot on the farm the first time, things get turned up to 11 and they stay there for the rest of the episode. The Pumpkinheads themselves are very terrifying. The decaying pumpkin heads, the deep black pits for eyes, and their teeth look sharp, but in closer inspection, they're actually just pumpkin seeds. That's genius, by the way. I also love how they have vines growing all around them to give them more of a planty feel. I did find Scott to be incredibly annoying. I'm sure most of you guys did as well. If he didn't have this strange idea that Halloween is the only night where you can mess with people and get no repercussions, he would probably still be alive. But no, he had to go back, which ultimately got him and his family stalked by a pumpkin-headed creature that in the end killed both him and his sister. Speaking of his sister, Allie is a saint. She does everything she can to keep her brothers happy and safe-ish. She even takes them to the farm the first time, even though she knows it's a bad idea. And when Scott blatantly disobeys her, she still goes out and looks for him. Honestly, she probably should have called the cops, but they never call the cops in this show. And Dave, he's just the goat. He's there for comic relief and doesn't do anything. And you know what? I love him for that. Okay, I'm gonna do something a little different now. Usually I'll do the story at the end of the video, but the story actually pertains to this episode, so I'm just gonna tell it right here, and then we'll get into the next episode. We start the story by meeting Mike, a 10-year-old boy that's upset that there's now a curfew for Halloween. They put a curfew on it because last year, a bunch of kids went missing on Halloween night, and the same thing happened the year before that. Mike is throwing a tantrum and keeping his family from going on their yearly visit to the pumpkin patch. But the family don't seem to be paying him any attention because he has a lot of tantrums. Like a lot. And their mom says it's because he's a redhead. Their mom said it, not me. It's literally in the story. The only reason Mike gets into the car is because our main character, Andrew's friend, Liz, tells Mike that he can help her choose out a good pumpkin if he just gets in the car. And this works because Mike has a crush on her. Now that the whole family's finally in the car, the family can drive over to Palmer's pumpkin patch. Andrew says that Farmer Palmer always creeped him out. He kind of reminds Andrew of a scarecrow. He's a tall, skinny guy who wears overalls that are way too big for him. He walks stiffly and patrols the pumpkin patch, staring at everyone who visits it. He says that they stare at him with his dark eyes that look like 2 holes in his face. When they finally arrive to the farm, a worker points them to the direction of the best pumpkins and warns them to not go over the green fence because that's Palmer's Palmer's private pumpkin patch, and no one else is allowed inside but him. Inside the farm, there are hundreds and hundreds of pumpkins that seem to stretch on forever, with scarecrows leaning over them every couple of yards. They explore the pumpkins for a couple of minutes, and they really haven't been there long when Mike decides it's a good idea to try to sneak inside his private pumpkin patch, because obviously the best pumpkins must be in there. Andrew tells him no way and tries his best to just ignore him, which just pisses Mike off. So as revenge, Mike throws a pumpkin at him. Luckily, it doesn't hit Andrew, but it flies over his shoulder, making a loud splat behind him. And Andrew retaliates by throwing one right back at him. And their friend Liz decides to join in on the fun, but their mom stops them and tells them that Palmer is watching them. He stiffly walks over with a scowl on his face and shakes his head in disapproval. Their mom asks them to head over the hill and search for a pumpkin while she talks to Palmer for a bit, which Andrew and Liz gladly do, but when they turn around, they see Mike is pulling at the door to the green fence. They run over and try to pull Mike away from the green fence, but he just won't let go. That is until Farmer Palmer yells, "Move away!" He stands over them with his hands on his hips and his eerie eyes staring daggers right through them. He tells them that these are his special pumpkins, his babies, and he doesn't think that they really want to see them. Mike apologizes, finally, and Farmer Palmer reaches over and grips Mike's head and says, "Not quite ripe yet, but it's getting there." Andrew and Liz nervously laugh at Farmer Palmer's idea of a joke, and he tells them once again that the pumpkins in there are his babies and they need to stay away from his babies. So Andrew grabs Mike's arm and pulls him all the way to the other side of the pumpkin patch. Mike hates that Mr. Palmer humiliated him like that, and he threatens to jump over that green fence and smash all his baby pumpkins. Andrew tries to tell his little brother to just calm down and forget about it, but Liz takes Mike's side, which makes Andrew really mad. She says it's very creepy and weird for him to grab Mike's head like that, and that he probably should get some revenge. But Mike claims that he doesn't really want to get revenge, he just wants to see what makes those pumpkins so special. And still very upset, Mike kicks a pumpkin which sends it rolling down a hill, which is amusing. So he does it to another one, and another one, and another one. Soon he's running down the whole row, kicking as many pumpkins as he can, as Andrew chases after him trying to make him stop. But Andrew accidentally slips and falls onto a rotting, stinky pumpkin, which Mike finds hilarious, of course. But his laughter pisses Andrew off so much that Andrew picks up the rotting pumpkin and throws it right onto Mike's chest. Finally, Farmer Palmer has had enough of these hooligans and kicks them out of the pumpkin patch. And I tell you, I don't blame the dude. They were just destroying the thing. Later that night, the kids finish trick-or-treating and are pretty disappointed at the lack of candy they get. Andrew and Liz spread out their candy on the living room floor to analyze what kind of candy they got, but this is when Andrew notices that he hasn't seen Mike in a while. But when Mike does appear, it looks like he's ready to go somewhere. He's got his jacket on and he's shoving some things into this white bag. He tells Andrew that he's leaving and he doesn't tell him where. Obviously, Andrew isn't going to let his 10-year-old brother just go anywhere by himself at night, so he grabs Mike by the hood, and Mike tells him that it's Halloween and he wants to do something fun and creepy. So he's going to go back to the farm and play a prank on Farmer Palmer because he asked for it. No, you were just trying to go somewhere that you were told not to go. Mike tells him that he's gonna take a bus to the farm and have some fun. And Liz thinks that it's a good idea because she's bored and she wants to have some fun as well. And since Andrew can't change their mind, he decides to go with them as well. Once they make it to the farm, they notice how creepy it is at night. The wind whispers through the pumpkin vines, the scarecrows creak in the wind, and an unsettling layer of fog just hovers over the pumpkins. The kids take a second to get over how creepy the place is, and Mike hands them all a can of spray paint and they just have fun spray painting all the pumpkins they can. After a while of spray painting pumpkins, Liz accidentally falls and hurts herself, and Andrew decides that they've had enough fun, they should probably head home. And when they turn around, of course, they find Mike climbing over the green fence trying to look at his special pumpkins. Andrew tells him to stop and come back, but of course he gets no answer. That is until Mike screams, "Help me," from the other side. Andrew sprints over to the fence and leaps over it with Liz limping closely behind him. Once they do make it over the fence, they spot Mike standing at the end of one of the rows, wearing his usual jacket and ripped jeans. But strangely, Mike has a huge orange pumpkin over his head. Andrew is a bit confused and asks him how he got a pumpkin over his head so fast, and lifts it off to find that Mike doesn't have a head. In shock, Andrew drops the pumpkin and looks down to see that Mike's head is growing off of a vine like a pumpkin, with his mouth opening and closing as if he was trying to call for help but couldn't say anything. That's when he notices that every pumpkin is a kid's head, and all their mouths are just slowly opening and closing, begging for help, but nothing coming out. Each one of them the boys and girls that have been missing for the past couple of years. Suddenly, Andrew feels a strong vine grip onto his legs, and he turns around to see that the vines have already gotten to Liz. This is when Mr. Palmer shows up, kneels down next to Mike's head, squeezes it, and says, "Not quite ripe yet, but it's getting there. Whoa, what an insane story. That's crazy. It's pretty long compared to the other stories in the book. I think this one was like 20 pages. Most of the other ones are like 10, maybe 15. The episode in the book do have a couple of similarities, like Farmer Palmer reaching down and grabbing someone's head saying it's not quite ripe yet. And there is an annoying sibling that has to get revenge for something I would have forgotten about the next day. But there are a lot more differences than there are similarities. First of all the characters are different. Different names, different ages, and we know that Mike is a redhead, so even different hair color. And in the show, they're all siblings, but in the story, only Mike and Andrew are siblings. But I think I prefer them to be siblings. I guess I just like the sibling energy that the episode has. And I think it makes more sense that Scott is a rebellious teenager at like 14 rather than Mike being rebellious 10-year-old. There's like no way a 10-year-old would want revenge as hard as Mike does. It just makes more sense that a younger guy would be a little silly, kind of like Dave is in the episode. But I do like how Farmer Palmer's pumpkin patch is open to the public in the story. It just makes more sense. Like in the episode, they even make a joke about him having so many pumpkins all to himself because it kind of just doesn't really make much sense.
Maybe he really likes pumpkin pie.
There's also a huge lack of pumpkin-headed people in the story. I think adding them in as an extra like supernatural element really elevated the story and made it super interesting and even scarier. And I think they knew that too because they decided to make another episode in season 4 because they knew we wanted a little more of those creepy-headed pumpkin boys, so let's get into that episode. Start this episode at Palmer's farm, and it looks abandoned. There aren't as many pumpkins, and the ones that are there are withering away. Next, we find out that there is a family moving into Farmer Palmer's house, and they're
You expect us to live here?
not too excited about it. The bratty daughter is named Karen. Wow, that kind of fits. And she is especially upset that her mom moved her away from all of her friends and is making her move into this dump of a house. Her brother Zach is pretty upset about it, but he's just not as loud as his sister.
What do you think of our new home, Zach?
I think if I had a bucket, I'd throw up.
And their dad is visibly upset about it, but he knows the one rule to life. Happy wife? Happy life. So he decides to keep his mouth shut. The mother, on the other hand, is super excited to move into the house.
It's a ranchette, and we got a super deal.
You might recognize the mom from Catching Cold. She was also the mom in that episode. And she is literally the only person in this episode that was in a previous Haunting Hour episode, which I think is a first for the channel. But the dad was on another show on the hub called Spooksville, and he was the dad in that show as well. The mom tries to lighten everybody's mood by asking them to not look at this as a downgrade, but look at it as a new lifestyle. But I don't think that worked out too well.
Now I feel better. Don't you feel better, Zach?
King of the world.
Inside the house looks just as bad as the outside of the house, and there's a foul stench coming from somewhere inside. The mom claims it's just an old house, so it's gonna be a little musty, but they can make it go away. The mom sees that the family isn't exactly happy about the place, so she decides to tell them what she likes about the house.
I think it has a little rustic charm.
If I had a nickel for each mother that said their creepy old house had a rustic charm, I'd have 3 nickels. As the family is getting acquainted with their new home, someone outside isn't too happy that they're around. Back inside, the family is going through some furniture that was left behind by Palmer. They find some really strange stuff, like a couch made completely out of hay, and a birdcage that has a tiny rotting pumpkin inside of it. Zach and Karen continue to whine about how terrible the house is, and they'd say that they were promised that it would be a nice home. But their dad retaliates by saying,
I think I said it would be nice once we settled in. I think that's what I said.
Oh yeah, that's gonna make it better. We learned that Zach is mainly upset because they moved in the middle of football season for him, and they kind of ruined everything that bonded him and his dad. Yeah, this guy definitely seems like the guy that would talk about the good old days of football when he's 40 years old. Later that day, Karen's on the phone with one of her friends, inside of a room that has a bunch of creepy old baby cribs and a loom for some reason. As she talks on the phone, somebody starts scratching the window beside her, and when she takes a peek out the window, nobody's there. And even stranger, she's on the 2nd floor. Her mom comes upstairs and asks Karen to help them unload some things and maybe they can start getting ready for Halloween night. And of course, Karen just gives her mom a ton of sass. Her mom is obviously excited to celebrate Halloween in their new house, but Karen claims that they're all too old for Halloween now. You're never too old for Halloween, so wrong. Plus, there's no houses anywhere around them, so it'd be useless to go trick-or-treating, except there is a suburban neighborhood just a couple of miles away. Did they forget about the suburban neighborhood in the previous episode? episode? Despite Karen being an annoying crybaby, her mom stays positive and she says that they can have a family Halloween party in their new home, which sounds just adorable, actually. And her mom even tells her that it would really mean so much to her if she just did this one thing for her today. But Karen replies,
Well, it would mean a lot to me if you hadn't made me move hundreds of miles for my friends.
okay, I get that you're angry, you moved into a new place, you don't like it, but just like get over yourself for like maybe 3 or 4 hours. Karen goes outside to help her brother unpack when she notices a kid wearing a costume that kind of makes it look like he wanted to be in the 21 Pilots music video. She walks over to the kid and she kindly introduces herself.
Kind of rude way to say hello to your new neighbors, don't you think?
Whoa, okay, right back at you, dude. Holy shit, she's so unlikable. The kid ominously tells her that they won't be neighbors for long, and that they moved into the house at the wrong time. He tells them that the house used to belong to Old Man Palmer and to not say anything mean about him because they're listening. The kid tells them what happened in the first episode, that Palmer grew pumpkins that he treated like his babies and that every night on Halloween, kids would mysteriously go missing, except for the previous year. One of the kids escaped, ran all the way to the police station, and all he could say was, the Pumpkinheads have got them, over and over and over again. But when they came to investigate the farm, they didn't find anything, and soon after that, Palmer died. Also, it's been confirmed that the kid that escaped was in fact Dave, so I'm so glad that he escaped. It's just kind of tragic because I know he has PTSD. There goes all the jokes. The kid says that he hears weird wailing coming from the field sometimes, and when they get especially hungry, they start scratching at his window. Kinda like what was happening to Karen earlier. Zach thinks the kid is just playing a Halloween prank on them, so he tells the kid to scram! He doesn't say scram, but I really wish he did. But the kid tells him that he wasn't telling a story, and that he's trying to warn them. After that, the kid leaves and Karen tells her brother that she did hear some scratching earlier, but of course her brother doesn't believe her. Cut to Zach, who's catching up with his dad, and they're gonna go check on the pumpkins that were left behind. The dad wants to pick a pumpkin so that their mom can make a pumpkin pie, but sadly,
Gross.
the pumpkins are rotten. They decide to check out a few more as somebody watches them nearby. Zach points out that his dad is wearing some odd clothes, and it turns out that he found some of old Farmer Palmer's clothes and decided to put them on. Ew! First of all, that's a dead guy's clothes. Second of all, did you even wash them? And third of all, the Pumpkinheads are not gonna appreciate you taking his stuff. Dad tries to have a nice conversation with Zach and heal this rough patch that they're going through. But of course, Zach is still pretty upset about the whole situation and just shuts down anything his father says. And after a minute, the dad sadly gives up and just continues to look for a nice pumpkin. But that's when a football comes from nowhere and starts rolling towards Zach. He walks over to it, picks it up, and looks around to see that no one's there. And when he turns around, his dad's gone too. He hears a loud noise coming from a building nearby, so he decides to run over to investigate. But he once again finds nobody. He can't see anybody, but he does hear them, so like the big tough guy he is, he threatens the disembodied noises, but I don't think they're too scared of him.
Last chance.
Well, they're really playing games with him. Finally, after a minute, he just runs away, and we actually get a glimpse of one of the Pumpkinheads, and we find out that they're out to capture the dad. Cut back to Karen, who's back on the phone with her friend, and she's telling her about the weird skeleton kid she had a conversation with. And once again, while she's on the phone, she hears scratching on the window. She investigates once again and still finds nothing outside. She opens up a little bit to her friend and tells her that she feels very paranoid in the house, like somebody's always watching them. And then her friend just suddenly has to hang up.
What do you mean you have to go?
The only time she's vulnerable this whole episode, and her friend is just a piece of shit. But as her friend hangs up, something starts reaching out for her. Oh! It was just their mom, who's in an awesome witch costume. Just like the dad, the mom is trying to patch up some of the wounds that she opened up by making the kids move so far away. And she offers Karen to help her make a pumpkin pie. So Karen gives it some thought.
No.
Damn, let me finish my sentence at least. That's when her mom has a heart-to-heart with her and tells her that she's gonna look back on these days and wish that she really just spent more time with her mom. That she's gonna feel so terrible that she didn't do it. So finally, Karen loosens up a little bit and she decides to go help her mom make some pie.
That's the spirit.
I love the quirky mom. She makes this episode fun to watch. Cut back to the dad who's watering a dead pumpkin. Okay. Doesn't have a green thumb, does he? It's even already carved. Why are you watering a carved pumpkin? When somebody decides to join him. Thinking it's Zach, he decides to have another heart-to-heart with him. He tells him that even if he doesn't want to make his dad happy, he should work to make the mom happy, and she just wants everybody to get dressed up and get into the Halloween spirit. That's when he finally looks up and realizes that it's not his son. Oh, it sounds like he rips his head off, dude. Does it not? You hear the crunch? Next, we get a short scene of Zach wandering around the farm when he spots a scarecrow standing in the middle of the yard. So like a normal person, he tackles it. Well, you don't tackle every scarecrow you see? Cut back to Karen and her mom making pumpkin pie, and it looks like Karen is finally coming around to everything. Or she's at least entertaining her mom to keep her happy. But in the other room, Zach starts unpacking stuff when he opens his closet door and sees the same scarecrow from earlier. Karen comes over to check out the commotion, and this is when Zach accuses her of pulling a prank on him, and also for messing with him outside near the barn earlier. And of course, she has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. She says that maybe it was their mom because she's trying to get in the Halloween spirit, so she could be just pulling pranks on Zach. So they confront her, and she claims she didn't do it in the best way possible.
It wasn't me. I pulled no Halloween tricks.
I tell you what, I believe her. And as they talk inside, somebody's keeping a close eye on them from the window. Good lord, you got somewhere to be, Pumpkinhead? Since it wasn't Karen or their mom pulling a pranks on Zach, Zach thinks that maybe it was the neighbor kid doing it to him. And as he says this, somebody opens the door right beside them. Zach runs out to investigate, but doesn't find anything but a lollipop on the ground. The same lollipop the skeleton kid was sucking on earlier. Zach furiously looks for the kid to teach him a lesson about pranking him, and a worried Karen follows right behind him. They search the fields for a while their mom makes the dinner table. And as she does this, the other tenants decide to give her a little visit. She turns around and to her shock,
Great costumes, guys!
oh god, she thinks it's her kids. Well, she does until they start slowly and silently inching towards her. The kids have no luck finding the skeleton boy, but they do run into his mom, who accuses them of kidnapping her son. She believes that since they moved into Palmer's house, they're equally as crazy as him, which is an insane train of thought. And as she's yelling at them for stealing her kid, they hear a noise nearby, which from the sound of it is the little boy. Or is it? We don't have time to worry about that because the Pumpkinheads have gotten to their mom. Inside, the house is trashed and the mom is nowhere to be found. The kids search the yard for their parents, but only find the scarecrow. Again. That's when they hear loud roars coming from the pumpkin patch, so they run over there to investigate it. When Karen gets over there, she notices that 2 pumpkins have burlap sacks over them. And when Zach lifts them off, it's their mom and dad. The kids dig them up surprisingly fast, and their bodies are still attached. I thought it was like just their heads, you know, pumpkin heads. Like they cut their heads off and then grow their heads like a pumpkin. I didn't know their bodies were still there. These are full-on pumpkin people. Their parents are unresponsive and the kids don't know what else to do. So they both agree to take them to the hospital. But of course it won't be that easy. Everywhere they turn, they're met with terrifying pumpkin heads. Luckily they get away and they get their parents inside the car, but the car won't start. Looks like the Pumpkinheads are a little smarter than they look. And even worse, the parents have fully turned. And that's the end of the episode. Personally, I think this episode is pretty good. Is it better than the first? No, but it's pretty good. It does have some really nice scares in it, and I find the Pumpkinheads to be more terrifying in this one. They actively try to capture the family the whole time, and it looks like they've gained some new powers. We know that they can now reach up to the 2nd-story window, and then we have the Flash over here. It's just vastly different from the somewhat normal, slow-moving Pumpkinheads that we got in the first episode. My guess is, since Palmer is dead, they probably haven't been taken care of or fed in a long time, and they probably hate that a new family is moving in so soon. And on top of that, the dad was wearing Farmer Palmer's clothes. That probably didn't make them feel any better. And both kids talk major shit about Palmer and the house itself. Even the mom, even though she's super optimistic most of the time, she takes a few jabs at the house, which was probably a tipping point for the Pumpkinheads, and that's probably why they attacked them so brutally. Plus, it was Halloween night. I mean, come on. Now let's talk about the family. Oh my god. Were Karen and Zach so annoying? Like, I think they're even more annoying than Scott in the previous episode. I understand that moving to a new place can be stressful and upsetting. I'm currently doing it. Look at this shelf, I have no more books. And I know the place that they're moving into isn't exactly in tip-top shape, but they could have been a little more gentle about the whole thing. Even Jeffrey in the episode Walls wasn't this annoying about moving into a house. And there was a man living in his walls. Karen does somewhat come around in the end, and at the very, very end of the episode, she even tells her parents that she does love them after they got turned into Pumpkinheads, but still. And Zach, he was a little less annoying than Karen, but he never had a redemption moment, so he just stays annoying. And he never forgave his parents, which must suck now because they're all dead. I also don't know what was going on with that scarecrow that just kept showing up. I guess the Pumpkinheads were just doing it to try to scare them, maybe? Or maybe it was its own supernatural spooky thing. Overall, I think these are some of the best Haunting Hour episodes. The twist in the first episode was definitely one of the craziest twists in the whole series, maybe in all of Goosebumps and the Haunting Hour. And the monsters themselves are terrifying. Top 3 scariest monsters, not even lying. Like they could be in an actual horror movie kind of scary. But come on, let's be honest with ourselves. The best Pumpkinhead is Sam from Trick or Treat. Let me know what you think about the episode Pumpkinheads or Return of Pumpkinheads in the comments below. Let me know which one you think is better. I have a Patreon. The $5 members get bonus content plus videos a day early, maybe some pictures of my cats, and a Discord server to come talk to me and have some fun in. Also, your name right here on screen. Like the video if you like the video. Thank you for watching the video all the way through. I appreciate you all, and peace.